Welcome to Infinite Archive. Today, we step back to the dawn of Indian democracy, the very first general elections of 1951-52. The mood across the country was electric. For the first time, millions of Indians, many of whom had never voted before, were going to decide the future of their nation. But hidden within this celebration was a story that revealed an uncomfortable truth. Even in the very first election, the process of democracy was not as pure as the ideal. This is the story of Dr. B.R. Ambedkar's surprising defeat, his allegations of electoral malpractice, and how his experience continues to echo in the political controversies of today. India had just become a republic in 1950. The constitution, drafted under Ambedkar's leadership, had promised universal adult franchise. Every adult Indian, rich or poor, literate or illiterate, male or female, now had the right to vote. The Bombay North Central constituency was unusual. It was a two-member constituency, one seat reserved for scheduled castes and one for the general category. This system, inherited from the transitional arrangements of the early elections, was meant to ensure representation for marginalized communities. Ambedkar, as leader of the Scheduled Castes Federation, SCF, contested for the reserved seat. His opponent? Narayan Sadoba Kairolkar, the Congress candidate, and ironically, a man who had once been Ambedkar's personal assistant. The political theatre could not have been more dramatic. Ambedkar was confident. He believed his reputation as the principal architect of the Constitution, combined with his tireless work for Dalit rights, had earned him overwhelming public support in Bombay. His campaign was intense but dignified, focusing on constitutional values, social justice, and the rights of marginalized communities. The Congress machine, however, was powerful, well-organized, deeply networked, and backed by the prestige of leading India's freedom struggle. When the results were announced, the shock was immediate. Kairolkar had defeated Ambedkar by about 15,000 votes. In a PTI report dated January 5, 1952, Ambedkar made his doubts public. How the overwhelming support of the public of Bombay could have been belied so grossly is really a matter for inquiry by the Elections Commissioner. This wasn't just disappointment, it was suspicion. The tone was that of a man who believed something in the process had gone wrong, deeply wrong. Ambedkar, along with Ashok Mehta of the Ambedkar Socialist Party, filed a formal petition before the Election Commission, demanding that the election be declared invalid. Their claims were serious. 74,333 ballot papers invalidated and rejected as unmarked, an enormous number by any standard, raising questions about voter education and possible deliberate manipulation. Voters allegedly encouraged to give both votes to a single candidate, a violation of Section 63(1) of the Representation of the People Act, 1951. Potential tampering with the will of the electorate, the suggestion that the irregularities were not random accidents, but the result of organized interference. In October 1952, the Bombay Election Tribunal heard the case. Ambedkar personally appeared, making his arguments with the same precision he once applied to constitutional drafting. But the tribunal dismissed the petition, without conclusive evidence, which in those days of limited record-keeping and no electronic auditing was almost impossible to produce. The irregularities remained allegations. Ambedkar had lost not just the seat, but also the chance to set an early precedent for rigorous electoral accountability. This defeat was more than a personal setback. For Ambedkar, who had designed the democratic framework of India, the experience must have been bitter to see the very system he helped build being, in his view, compromised so early in its life. He would never again contest a Lok Sabha election. The incident became a quiet scar in the story of Indian democracy, overshadowed by the grand narrative of electoral triumph. Ambedkar's doubts were not just about his own loss, they were about the integrity of the electoral process itself. He had seen that powerful political machines could outmaneuver reformist leaders. Election procedures could be exploited in ways the law hadn't anticipated. Institutions designed to protect fairness could be slow, cautious, or unwilling to act decisively without irrefutable proof. It was an early signal that the idea of free and fair elections in India would always be fragile, vulnerable to both human manipulation and institutional inertia. Fast forward more than 7 decades. India is now an electoral giant with nearly 1 billion registered voters. Technology has replaced the ballot paper with electronic voting machines. Political parties have become even more sophisticated in strategy, funding, and messaging. And yet, the allegations remain eerily familiar. Today, leaders like Rahul Gandhi allege that the voter list is being manipulated, that votes are being stolen, and that the entire electoral machinery is sometimes used to distort the real mandate of the people. Many dismiss these claims as mere political excuses, but if history has taught us anything, it's this. What seems like just politics today could be tomorrow's documented truth. Ambedkar's experience in 1952 tells us that suspicions about election integrity are not a new phenomenon. They are part of the DNA of Indian democracy. Why do so many people dismiss such allegations so quickly? There are 2 common reasons. Historical amnesia. Many simply don't know that even figures like Ambedkar once questioned election fairness. Without that awareness, today's complaints sound like isolated gripes. Power blindness. Those benefiting from the status quo rarely want the system examined. If the existing machinery works in their favor, it's easier to label critics as sore losers. Both attitudes are dangerous. They normalize a slow erosion of democratic safeguards. In Ambedkar's time, electoral irregularities were physical and visible. Invalid ballots, suspicious markings, possible intimidation at polling stations. Today they can be invisible and digital, EVM tampering allegations. While the Election Commission maintains their security, skeptics argue that no system is beyond manipulation. Algorithmic voter roll changes. Digital voter lists can be altered quietly, removing genuine voters or shifting polling stations without proper notice. Influence through data. Micro-targeted political advertising on social media platforms can subtly shape voter behavior without leaving a paper trail. The core problem has remained the same: how to ensure that every vote cast is a vote counted. But the battleground has shifted from the counting table to the coding lab. Institutions matter. In 1952, Ambedkar approached the Election Commission and the Bombay Election Tribunal. Both heard him, but neither acted in his favor. Today, the complexity has deepened. Electoral oversight bodies, judiciary, bureaucracy, and sometimes even sections of the media may be seen as reluctant to take on cases that could shake political stability. This raises a troubling question. What happens when the referees of democracy are perceived to be playing for one team? A democracy can survive corruption for a while, but not widespread public apathy. When voters stop caring about the fairness of the system or accept manipulation as just the way things are, the democratic structure becomes a hollow shell. In 1952, Ambedkar's petition did not ignite a mass movement. Today, social media outrage burns fast, but fades even faster. The pattern is the same: temporary noise, no structural change. Why does a democracy, built on the principle of fair representation, often tolerate unfair elections? The answer lies in a mix of fear and convenience. Fear of instability. Investigating election fraud can destabilize governments and erode public trust, so institutions avoid it. Partisan benefit. Every party, at some point in history, has benefited from electoral loopholes, making them hesitant to close them completely. Short political memory. Voters tend to prioritize immediate issues, jobs, prices, local benefits, over systemic integrity. This tolerance is dangerous. It sends a message that rules can be bent if the result is popular enough. Ambedkar's life was dedicated to empowering the marginalized through law, education, and political participation. His defeat, under circumstances he believed were unjust, was more than a personal loss. It was a signal that even the best laws cannot protect democracy if the culture does not value electoral integrity. It's a warning we've ignored for decades, and each time we ignore it, we step further into the normalization of manipulation. This is not just an Indian problem. Around the world, democracies wrestle with allegations of stolen elections, voter suppression, and institutional bias. The difference is how nations respond. Some hold rigorous independent audits. Others, like India in 1952, dismiss petitions and move on. The result? The same controversies repeat, generation after generation. From Ambedkar's defeat to modern disputes, The lessons are clear: transparency over prestige. No institution should hide behind its reputation. Every allegation must be tested openly. Public vigilance. Citizens must demand clean elections, regardless of which party benefits. Independent oversight. Election monitoring should be insulated from political influence. Democracy is not a gift we receive once. It's a trust we must defend every day. In 1952, Ambedkar tried to defend it and failed. That failure is still with us. When modern leaders speak of electoral fraud, we can debate their politics, but we must never dismiss the principle behind the concern. To do so is to betray the very foundation of our democracy. The first election gave us freedom's voice. If we allow manipulation to silence it, then the sacrifice of those who built this republic, from the framers of the Constitution to the first voters of independent India, will have been in vain. This is Infinite Archive. History speaks. The question is, are we listening?